Dave, I either made the best decision of my life or my worst, and I really don't know whether this is which way it's going to go yet. And you got to talk me off the ledge. A couple weeks ago, you remember there was a studio space right next to mine that was about between 2 and 3 times bigger than what I had.
Right.
And I found out that it was being rented for not a whole lot more than mine was. Like it wasn't an insurmountable sum. And so I found out it was coming open, and I flagged down the building manager and I said, you know what? I'm going to take that space. I'm going to move my stuff over there. And my life has been upside down ever since.
Oh no!
Because I did splurge and I got carpeting partially because of the podcast. I wanted to knock down the echo a little bit.
Sure.
And also that was the one thing that I wished I had done when I moved in 10 years ago to my present space was I wished I had just put a little carpeting down in there. And so it was getting the carpeting put in. And now, between putting, literally, I've been in that space for 10 years, and I've accumulated 10 years worth of stuff. Plus, I've also got a storage space, and part of my plan, since I pay extra for the storage space, was to pull all the stuff over from the storage space, not since I got about 3 times as much room, put some storage shelves in, put all those boxes along the back wall, and have everything in one area, right? But it means tearing down 10 years worth of original art on the wall and tchotchkes that are up on shelves, and 10 years worth of files, and then also 2 pallets and 2 metal shelves full of just boxes of books. So yesterday, thank God for my 2 sons. I told them, I said, Monday, I'm going to need you both. We've got to move all this stuff, and I'm just going to need you. My older son did not have work that day. My younger son didn't have anything going on, so I'm like, clear Monday. And we spent all day Monday just lugging books. Lugging books. But Sunday night, I had, those 3 a.m. panic attacks when your heart's beating out of your chest. I don't know that it's technically a panic attack, but your heart's beating out of your chest and you can feel the blood pulsing through your neck, and you wake up staring at the ceiling going, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to fit that desk out the door. I'm going to have to disassemble it. It's an IKEA desk. They never put back together, though. You got one shot with an IKEA desk. Yeah. It's the first time you put it together. You take it apart, and it's done. We're going to have to take that, and I've also got an IKEA bookshelf, and it's going to be too tall. I don't think it's going to fit out the door, and how are we going to do that? And I had like every... Dave, I'd like to tell you that I slept like a baby. I woke up every 2 hours and cried. It was, and then we got there, and my sons, like troopers, they just absolutely pitched in and brought all these books. I don't have the metal shelves in place yet, because also, by the way, I'm doing a college trip. We're hitting the road tomorrow to Pittsburgh to go see some colleges for Maxie. The week after that, I'm thrilled to be going down to San Diego to see you and to do the live show. The week after that, we're going to Michigan for a week to see my family. So I could get the metal shelves, I can get them ordered, but they're not going to get here at a time when I can actually assemble them. So everything's on the floor. And then last night, I was having 3 a.m. panic attacks because I've got easily a couple tons of books sitting on the floor. And I'm like, it's going to fall through the floor. There's no way that floor is going to hold all that weight. It's going to fall through the floor. I wake up in the morning, Carolyn could see me, pacing. I got up out of bed, checked my phone because I keep it at the other side of the bedroom, checked my phone to see if I got any emergency messages. She says, what's the matter with you? I said, I think these boxes are going to fall through the floor. She said, it's not a McMansion that you're in. This was built pre-World War II. It was a factory building. The floors are fine. You can put this weight on the floor. It'll be just fine. I'm like, I think I should call the building manager and tell him that make sure. She says, please don't. Just, it'll be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm telling you, and today I did the best thing for my mental health. I spent 2 hours before coming back here just putting books on shelves, putting stuff.
Just organizing.
Yes. And setting up the computers, making sure they can run and everything. The Wi-Fi reaches, so I don't have that switched over yet, but that'll come next. I'm telling you, Dave, my entire life is upside down. When it's done, and it's going to take until the fall until it's done, because I'm going to have to do it in drips and drabs. When it's done, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But right now, I got to tell you, I'm ready to jump off the roof.
Oh, Brad. So I gotta be the friend here and tell you, because I can see it in your body language, by the way, and I can see it in your vocal tones. I can hear it in your vocal tones. I don't know if other people can hear it, but I can hear the anxiety. So I just gotta tell you, as a friend, and I want you to look into my eyes, you've made a horrible mistake. You have walked down a road you should not have walked down.
Oh my God. I laughed so hard I pulled my earpiece out. That is not what I needed to hear.
Let me hand you this shovel so you could continue to dig your own grave. No.
My God.
So here's the thing. You are right. It's going to be amazing when it's done. I know this feeling, though, that right now that you're feeling, because I think between the two of it, actually both of us in the last 5 years have sort of had a move house situation where we had to move out, move back in.
Yeah.
And in both of those situations, it's like $100 here, $300 there, $400 over here. And then all the concerns of like, hey, stupid concerns of like that one plug on that wall, does that work? Do I have to call an electrician? Or is that just, is it just that the fuse box that maybe, and it's all the stupid worries of a new place and all the new fears and all, it even comes down to like the creaking that you hear in a new house. Does that represent a problem? Or is that a ghost? Or is that a water heater that's about to burst? Or, oh no, it's just the floorboards, that's fine. And it just takes you 6 months for all of that to calm down.
Yes.
And so that exact same feeling is, I'm sure, in moving studio. And also based on the list that you just gave me, the chef's list that you just described, you're seeing dollar after dollar going out in the next 4 weeks here.
Oh yeah.
And I know that triggers anxiety as well. So you've got all the anxiety of a move plus dollar signs, and I get it, my friend. I just want you to know I get it. I understand what you're feeling right now.
Yeah. I'm Cheapskate McGee. I mean, putting the money into the carpet was like it was like pulling teeth. But I knew I was going to regret it if I didn't, right? But now I got to put a few $100s into metal shelves. I didn't want to do that, but I got to do it. I'm going to have the Verizon guy to come out. I don't know what that's going to cost. So it's like, and it's just, I'm telling you, it's going to be great when it's done. But man, these next few months, I'm going to be just miserable.
I mean, I have seen the space. You took me through a little FaceTime tour of it, and it's beautiful. It's psychologically, it's so much more pleasant to create art in. You're going to make great art in that studio.
And I've got so much more wall space for hanging art. Like I've got a bunch of art that I've just never got up on the walls. I'm going to have so much more room to put stuff up on walls, which is also makes me very happy, very gratifying, But I also know that your studio, much like my space, it's also kind of the space that our wives let us put all the stupid tchotchkes that we've gotten at Comic-Cons. And if you've got 10 years worth of that stuff like I do, it's just like, why did I keep this limited edition Donatello? I don't even like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Why is this in my studio? I got this from Comic-Con 2004. Yeah. Although one thing I do have to say, it happened today, one bright shining moment is that you excavate things from your own past that you forgot. So it's a discovery. I didn't realize I had this, and now I've got to frame it. I've got an autograph from Victor Borg, and I didn't know I had. Because when he came to Akron, we took Carolyn's grandparents to see him. I had a great time. I wrote him a fan letter. He wrote me back. I found it. I'm like, oh my God, I've got an autograph from Victor Borg.
That's actually tremendous. Can I ask you a quick question about that?
Yeah.
Who the hell is Victor Borg?
Do you really not know who Victor Borg is, or are you twerking me?
I have zero idea.
He was this Danish pianist who was a comedian.
Danish what?
Pianist. He was a piano player.
Okay.
But he did classical piano, and he did, do you remember that old guy on Sesame Street that used to read the fairy tales, but he would do the punctuation? So he said, Sleeping Beauty. That guy, that was Victor Borg. That was Victor Borg.
Oh, that guy actually is great. You should look him up on YouTube. I actually now know who he is.
Yes,
he was amazing.
And I've got his autograph, so now you can be jealous.
That single moment makes up for all the anxiety and the sleeplessness. And you're right, Brad. That has saved the day. Is getting Victor Borg's signature.
In a weird way, it kind of did.
And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about making comics with anxiety attacks.
And making big mistakes and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/Comic Lab. So Dave, let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. We've got a lot of fantastic questions. I got to say, this show's got really chock-a-block with good questions. And I'm going to jump us right into our first question that comes in over at patreon.com/Comic Lab from Emily, who writes in, now that I've settled into making a webcomic, and side note, I've been publishing updates for almost a year now. Hooray! I've realized just how many shoulds keep building up in my goals. I should have a strong social media presence. I should get working on my own website rather than just post to Webtoons. I should be making more promotional posts like videos to attract more viewers. The only should that I'm consistently doing okay with is keeping to my update schedule, which is twice a month. Once I start to look outside that, I'm getting overwhelmed by just how many things I ought to be doing. Do you have any advice for dealing with the growing list of tasks you get as a comics artist, especially if you're doing it all your own? Sometimes when I think about all the other things I should be doing, my brain just wants to shut down. Thanks for all the lovely advice you guys provide, Emily. So, Brad, I'm going to ask this question, all the shoulds that you should be doing and feeling overwhelmed. I'm going to ask this of one of America's favorite cartoonists who's not at all feeling overwhelmed in his own career right now. And who actually, this all comes full circle because I'm so glad you brought it. This all fits. Okay. Yes.
So
good.
Right now, when I walk into my studio, I am literally in Emily's position. I am beset with shoulds.
Yes.
I should get that computer set up. I should get those books on the bookshelf. I should hang my original art. I should make sure that the floor's not going to collapse. I should be doing all of those things, right? But I can't. You can't. And by the way, if I could spend the next week doing that, I'd fall behind on my comic. I wouldn't be doing stuff for my Patreon backers, which would be a real big mistake.
Yes.
I wouldn't be doing any social media. And right now, with Threads just near the end of its first week, this is kind of the time right now to be really kind of scrambling on Threads for people who are trying to build. I got a lot of shoulds, right? Just like Emily, I got a lot of shoulds. And the fact of the matter is if I try to get all those shoulds done, if I try to do everything, I'm going to end up accomplishing nothing. So I want Emily to do what I did. I took today, literally just before coming here, I spent 2 hours just putting books on a bookshelf. Literally I did a couple other things too, I set up a couple computers, took me 5 minutes. But the main focus, the main reason I drove out to the studio today was I was going to get all those books up off the floor and I was going to put them in shelves.
Yeah.
And that cleared out some floor space. It got stuff up on shelves that that it starts to look like it's supposed to look, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it did wonders. All joking aside, did wonders for my mental state. And then once I get that and everything is okay, the next time I go in there, I'm going to take another thing that's just small and manageable, and I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to stop doing comics. I'm not going to stop doing my other stuff, but I'm going to, every time that it's comfortable to do so, I'm going to add one of my shoulds, and then I'm going to get that. And once I can master getting some more in, then I'm going to take on another should. And I'm going to say, Dave, that Emily should be doing exactly the same thing. Pick one of those shoulds, bring it into your monthly list of things to do. And once you've got that conquered, then consider adding another should.
Yeah, first of all, I think that's great advice. Second of all, I want to say to Emily and to every other question asker today that no matter what the topic is brought up to for the show, here's what the answer is going to be. So David, Brad, I'm launching my first Kickstarter, and here's Brad. All right, now listen, today I put books on shelves. This is what you gotta do. Just get those goddamn books on that goddamn shelf.
This is all coming back to the shelves. I'm telling you, everything is going to be back to the shelves.
Hey, Brad, I'm exhibiting at my first Comic-Con next week in Paris. In Paris, France. It's a small Comic-Con. Let me tell you about getting carpeting down in your studio. Here's
you're gonna want to spring for the pad. Listen, you're not want to spend a couple extra $100 for the pad, but later on you're going to really appreciate it. Your feet are going to thank you when you're standing at your booth, and you're going to want to make sure that you have the pad.
Listen, Francois, I am going to answer your question about small Parisian Comic-Cons. I just want to say, though, pre-World War II American factories were built with pressure-treated wood and steel to be able to handle loads upwards of 10,000 pounds. So I'm fairly certain that my books are not going to break through the floor. Anyway, now let's get to your small Parisian Comic-Con. All right. I can just feel us working through, Brad. Yeah. This is going to be a session. It's going to be a session for Brad, and you know what? That's okay. Yeah. That is okay.
This is going to be my therapy.
So I want to say to Emily that actually Brad, especially because he's in this moment of high stress, he's right, which is I often find when I have too many shoulds or lists that are so big, especially when certain tasks, like I've got to get this entire book ready for print, or I've got to get all the Kickstarter materials ready and on the Kickstarter, or I've got to redo my website. That is overwhelmingly large. And so what I do is I break up the shoulds into manageably sized chunks. Yep. So that there's a feeling of completion, because there is nothing worse than devoting 3-4 hours of your workday where you know you could have gotten a comic done, and you got a task 1/3 done. It's so frustrating. So it is so nice to be able to have a checklist with like manageably sized chunks of a task that you can check off or scratch off, or you know what? I got 2 shelves done of books, and that's enough. But the truth is, and I know I'm half joking at Brad, the truth is having something that can be scratched off saying, I got a shelf done. I got another shelf done. That is a manageable way to tackle a large task, which is I need to set up this whole GD studio. Yeah. How do I do it? So Brad is breaking it up into small tasks. So as much as I'm joking with my friend, that actually is psychologically a smart way to do this. So I hear you, Emily, on all your task lists, because I know Brad does, and I certainly have a huge task list at the moment that I'm not accomplishing on. And so what's nice about having this big running to-do list, and it depends on you whether you have it on paper or digitally, is that you can, as you're falling asleep one night, if you're having an anxiety attack and pacing around the room, try to block them off by how much time it would take each task to do. Like put it in parentheses, like, need to revamp my social media, 2 hours. Need to do this, 15 minutes. Need to go to the bank and talk to them, half an hour driving, 10 minutes talking to them, whatever it is. And what's nice about that is if you know you have a meeting at 3 and it's 2 o'clock, you can go to your to-do list and say, like, do I have any manageably sized chunk of a task that I can do in an hour? And it's just, it fills the days a little bit better with productivity than you might otherwise doing. But also, I think Brad's on the right path, which is pick one, focus that in, get it down, Because as we all know, things get easier to do the more you do them. So as you incorporate social media or website design or this or that, you're going to get faster at it. And so then you now have comics and social media. Okay, I got those two down. Then Brad would probably advise, as I would, go on to the third thing, start working that into the task list.
Yeah.
And I think that's the strategy for handling this one.
Yeah. And also, I'll just bring this to a real quick end by saying the number one thing you need to put on your to-do list is to be kind to yourself, because you can't do it all. You can't do all your shoulds, and that's okay. No one can do all those shoulds.
My God, I'm hearing such self-talk in this moment, and I'm here for it. I'm here for it because I know you're talking to Emily, but you're kind of not. You're kind of not talking to Emily in this moment. You just, Emily, you just got to be kind to yourself. You've made this decision about your studio, and Emily, you just got to roll through it. You can't go over it, can't go around it. Got to go through it, Emily. So just order that carpeting, Emily. Get those shelves in.
Yeah. Emily, listen, you're not going to get your art up on the wall for a little while, and that's okay.
That's okay.
You can use some time to mentally envision what that's going to look like, and that will make you happy too, Emily. It's okay. Be kind to yourself. You're not a big failure who made a horrible mistake, and it's going to fall through the floor one day.
No. Is that the self-talk that you're a failure? Is that what this is becoming?
Oh.
Be honest with me.
Oh, yes. Yes,
really?
You want to know the truth?
Yeah.
You want to know the truth? I'm worried, and we should be talking about Emily, but I'm worried that I'm like this. We've seen so many people kind of make that one pivotal thing, and it was the first step down the wrong path, and then it just snowballed.
Sure.
This happened, and then that, and I'm worried that this is the first part of my snowball.
Okay. Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes. I'm trying to figure out how to
because this is the first step, and then now I've got not only all this stuff to do, but I've got a bigger rent check, right? So I've got to make sure that I don't spend so much time putting books on shelves that I forget to do lots of stuff for my Patreon backers, so my Patreon doesn't slip, so I can still make my rent. You see, it's a snowball thing that I'm worried that maybe I should have just kept my mouth shut and stayed where I'm at. You know,
absolutely. And listen, you and I suffer from a similar thing, which is the potential for catastrophic thinking, because we're artists and we have creative brains. And our brains go, well, this is how I lose my leg. I get the new studio, and then I'm moving the bookshelf with the boys, and then the bookshelf falls on my leg, and that's how I lose my leg. And then I did it to myself. So we have catastrophic thinking, and also you and I, personality-wise, are not great at treating ourselves. And this new studio is treating yourself. Yeah,
it's a splurge.
And listen, I personally think like it's financially a good thing. You will do better work in that studio. But I understand 100% that to you this is treating yourself, and therefore the Catholic guilt says only bad things will come from treating yourself. You instead should be doing something for somebody else instead of doing it for yourself. Right. So I because I had this exact same thought, and I'll tell you where it came from. When I got back from my Alaska trip, and I'm like, well, I caught COVID, and my wife's like, you'll be okay. You know, I'm isolating, so I'm like talking to her over FaceTime, and I'm like, well, this is what I get for treating myself to a trip to Alaska. And she's like, don't say that. Why would you say it that way? Because I was like, well, this is what I get for doing something nice for myself. Oh, well. So I hear you that's catastrophic thinking, and that the self-punishing for doing something nice for yourself. Yeah. Anyway,
it's murder.
And I think Emily can relate to that.
So Emily, we're going to be worthless. I'm going to be worthless today. But Emily, certainly, I think there's something in there that you can glean. Just listen, Emily. Stay with.
Off comment. So Emily, I really think Emily, there's got to be some scraps there that you can work with in your own career. Emily, best of luck to you. Oh God, no, I actually think you gave Emily the best advice in the first 10 seconds there. So you're not wrong. Which is tackle it in chunks, tackle it one at a time. Yeah. Tackle and then I would add to it my own tidbit, which is set time limits for certain achievable, manageably small sized chunks of those should lists. And I think that's the way to do it.
Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we're going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
When you do, you're going to get hours and hours of podcasts that we recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, which is a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, we get it. No worries.
Yeah, listen, you can still support the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.
Just leave a 5-star review and a few kind words.
That, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics.
Dave, one mistake that I haven't made, one thing that I've done that has not been a mistake, and as a matter of fact, it's one of the things that's been giving me little shots of encouragement every now and again, is I look at my phone and I see that I've made another sale on DriveThruComics, who happens to be the sponsor of today's show at DriveThruComics.com. Remember, through is spelled THRU, so it's DriveTHRUComics.com. And I'm telling you, it is such a fantastic place to sell your ebooks and e-comics. It's a really great, welcoming community. I've gotten lots of great response selling things there, and it's been something that every now and again you just get a little a boink of happiness in your phone when you find out that you've made another sale.
And this is DriveThruComics is exactly the kind of income that we advocate for when you are owning and controlling your own business, because it's so key for a small independent cartoonist that is building their career. And this is what it is. It's passive income. You set it and forget it. So you have you load up the digital files, the audio files, the film files, the image files onto DriveThruComics. You've got your books up there. You've got everything you need. And then all of your links are continually sending readers, lovers of your passionate followers of your art over there, buying the stuff on a passive basis, meaning you're not actively having to fulfill. You're not actively having to answer emails or this or that. It is just income that's coming in a steady stream every month, every quarter, every year. And it has served Brad really well in his career to have that DriveThruComics account.
Absolutely. Now, this is one of those things you want to check the show notes, and I'll have lots of stuff for you there, because I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 links here that you're going to want to know about. First of all, they just did a site redesign, and they want to know what you think about it, specifically as someone who sells e-comics and e-books. So I'll have a link there for preview.drivethrucomics.com where you can check out the site redesign, and then you can fill out a quick form for publishers to give feedback, and I'll have that link for you as well. Also, if you're thinking about starting at DriveThru.com, and I really endorse it strongly, I'll have a link there that has information on setting up a publisher account. And the 4th link I'll tell you about is guides for creating and publishing digital and print-on-demand books, which will help you get started. They're really super good at helping people get their sea legs, hit their ground running, and get publishing. And I always give him credit. This was a guy, much like Kickstarter. The guy's name is Matt, real nice guy over at DriveThru. Comes up to me at a comic convention. He says, we got this thing, DriveThruComics. And I'm like, looks terrible. I don't want anything to do with it. And he goes, okay, well, maybe you'll change your mind. I said, I won't. And he walks away. All right, it's very nice. Next year he comes up. Have you thought about it? And I'm like, nah, I don't want anything to do with that. He says, okay, well, I'll check on you again. Comes back another year. He says, so have you given it any thought? And I said, you know what? At that point, the publishing landscape had changed a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm ready to give this a thought. He says, well, you know what? If you do, here's how you get set up and blah, blah. And he says, while you're at it, he says, I've got an idea for you. You want to hear it? And I go, yeah. He goes, you should do a source book for the Evil Ink characters where people could use them in RPGs. And you just make up And he said, be very careful. Don't make it like it's got to be used for one player, one type of game or another type of game. Just give general stats. He called it system agnostic was the term he used. But just give general stats to your characters so people can use them in their RPGs. It's sold. It was years and years ago I did this. It's sold for me ever since. And it was something that he just said, try this out. You might like it. But he knew enough about what my comic was that he could make that kind of suggestion after I sent him packing for years. If anything, it tells you the kind of folks you're dealing with here. They're not like fly by night. They're not going to be, pitching you NFTs next month. You're talking about meat and potatoes comics people right here.
Yes.
Our kind of people.
Yes.
And so that's why I'm so happy they're endorsing us. They're good people, and I think you're going to have a great time getting your stuff up there.
And that's why we're giving a huge shout out and a thank you to DriveThruComics. Remember, THRU, DriveThruComics.com.
We've got an update we've got to make sure that we tell people about. First one is the NCS live show. The NCS convention is going to be September 6th through the 8th. We are going to be doing a special Friday brunch live podcast on September 8th. So that'll be after the Reuben Awards, I think, which is going to be the night of the 7th. We're going to be up, I think, 11 o'clock on the 8th doing a live show. And Dave, we've got a special guest we get to talk about.
That's right. Sarah Anderson of Sarah Scribbles, one of our favorite cartoonists in the world who we have infinite admiration for. I'm so excited to get to talk to her on the show. And Jason Chatfield, another cartoonist of amazing talent, who's also the current president of the NCS, is going to be joining us on the podcast as well. It's going to be a really fun chat. So if you are a cartoonist going to the Reuben Award weekend, block out some time. It's going to be a fun one to join us with. And I got to tell you, there's no better situation to have Brad and I podcasting than the night after we've been drinking heavily at the Reuben Awards, either in joy or in sadness after winning or losing. So
we'll either be toasting one another's success or we'll be drinking away our sorrows. Either way, you are the winner the next morning.
You are the beneficiary of the worst hangover the next morning. Welcome to the podcast. Can someone bring me some of the French toast, please? I just need to get something in my stomach.
Just something with some carbs to soak up some of this acid.
I just need some bready foods, please. If you could just keep bringing me English muffins. I just want to. So do join us for that. And then the other update I wanted to share with everybody, as I'm personally on week 2 as of this recording of using Threads. And I have to say, so far I am continuing to like it. Tolerate it, I guess, is a better way to say it at this point. I'm not over enthused. I'm just it's working for me, and that's great. Have you felt like me though, Brad? This is the entirety of the update I want to say. Have you felt like me where usually in the second or third act of every Scooby-Doo episode, they would do that hallway scene where they're running back and forth between the doors.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Where you post on Threads and then you jump back over to Twitter to see if anything's moving over there. And then you copy paste and you post the same thing over to Twitter, which feels stupid, by the way, but you do it. And then you have a thought over here and you're bringing that over to Threads and you run back over there. It's a weird interregnum period where Twitter is not yet dead and Threads is not yet fully alive. And so we're running back and forth between the two.
Yes, it's been bizarre. Although I do have to say, I don't know whether I haven't actually compared numbers, but tell me whether you're having the same feeling. Twitter is deader and deader by the day. Am I right about that, or am I wrong?
You're not wrong about that. My numbers have sort of accelerated in terms of going down. And I have to say, every day my numbers continue to go. In fact, I'm looking at Twitter right now, and yes, absolutely, my numbers have gone down in the last 5-7 days. Yeah, so it's definitely on its way out. Unfortunately, it still has some remnant value for those of us that have been on there for a decade. We've built up a few thousand people. Some of us 10,000 people, tens of thousands, and so I'll still be posting there, but I got to tell you, now I feel increasingly less pressed to post there as Threads gets bigger and bigger. It's not a replacement yet. I don't have 100% replacement of my Twitter followers on Threads, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
But can I ask you this? And I want to know if it's only in my imagination that I'm feeling this way. Do you notice that Threads seems to be more of an international follower base than Twitter was for you?
That's a good question. I have not noticed that, but now I'm going to start paying attention.
Do start paying attention to it, because I may be wrong. It may just be that I'm paying attention for the first time in years in a way that I hadn't been to Twitter.
Right.
But I can just sense that I'm getting a bigger international following. And I don't know that's necessarily to my benefit in terms of shipping books or coming to Comic-Cons or shipping Kickstarters. Exactly. But potentially maybe they are a good Patreon base. I'm not sure yet, but it's just something to keep an eye on. But anyway, okay, so that covers the 2 updates that we had for this week. So let me jump into the next question we got for the show. And this comes in over at patreon.com/comiclab from Kay. Kay writes in, Brad and Dave, I have a young friend who's about to embark on their college career where they've informed me they're going towards a sequential arts degree. I've purchased Scott McCloud's Making Comics as a gift and want to pass on what advice I have for them. What advice would you have actually listened to when you were 18 and stepping out into the world for your own or on your own for the first time? And that's Kalisa is writing that in. And so Kalisa, Brad, what answer do you have for Kalisa for their 18-year-old friend who is going into a sequential art degree and is 18 and may or may not listen to your advice?
You know what? I think you should give your 18-year-old friend some credit because I know it seems as if you take a look at somebody who's 18 and you see them making certain decisions that you wouldn't make, maybe getting a studio that might be too big for them.
That's a classic 18-year-old mistake. Getting it over their head on a rent that they shouldn't have done. That's a
impulse control is something that we need to talk about. But in all seriousness, I think you should give your 18-year-old friend some credit, because I don't know about you, Dave, but I got some crucial information when I was in college from an editorial cartoonist. And not only did I follow that information, but it guided like the next 20 years of my life in a really beneficial way. And I got that information in those college years. And it was, I thank goodness that somebody cared enough about me to give me real straight advice instead of platitudes and aphorisms and stuff like that. I think you should. I think the first thing my advice would be is not to hold back and to give some real serious, honest advice to your 18-year-old friend, because you might just be surprised at what sinks in.
I think that's true. The old scientific aphorism is that the human is still developing until 23, 25, something like that, in terms of intellect, emotion, social ability, and all that sort of stuff. So yes, they're not fully formed yet. They're still cooking. But I have met some 18-year-olds who are more mature, more savvy into the world and the way it works than some 48, 58-year-olds that I know. So I'm with Brad on this, that it's worth giving them solid, straightforward advice that it doesn't dumb it down, basically. My advice would be, so it's a little tricky because it sounds like they've already settled on a sequential art degree, although maybe there is time to change it, because I actually tend to give it the advice that a sequential art degree specifically is not something that I personally would recommend. You and I, Brad, could point to 2, maybe 3 people that we know that got a degree in sequential arts that has made a career in comics. But I think that paints over the 400 to 500 to 1,000 people, 400 to 500 to 1,000 people that we don't consider that got a sequential art degree, don't have a career in sequential art, and now have a degree that's a little harder to apply to corporate or working life, No,
I think you're exactly right.
And so, frankly, cartooning being a career where you just got to put in your 10,000 hours anyway, meaning you're drawing because you love it, and the 10,000 hours are going to be required. I tend to advise people to get a more broadly based liberal arts degree that also in years 3 and 4 incorporate maybe 1 or 2 business classes. And then also have a healthy sprinkling of art classes throughout, both in your major and then, all the electives on the side. But anyway, that sort of broad, wider scope of an education, I think, is beneficial because it's more adaptive to a world that is changing, which is always the case for us in a technologically changing world, but also because I think a broader liberal arts education is basically teaching you how to learn, teaching you how to teach yourself to tackle the world. It's a lot like when you know, Brad, your 14 or 15-year-old comes to you and goes, why do I have to learn math? I'm never going to need to figure out the volume of a barn. This is dumb. Why are they teaching me this? And it's like, well, no, what they're teaching you is they're teaching you logic. They're teaching you problem solving. They're teaching you the steps of figuring out a solution. And that, I think, is in part what a liberal arts education does, which is it teaches you how to teach yourself and how to tackle problems. And so a sequential art degree, don't get me wrong, is lovely. And there's a huge part of my soul that wishes I could have it now, but I don't know that I would have gotten here had I done a sequential arts degree. I think actually a broader liberal arts degree helped me. What do you think, Brad?
Yeah, I agree. I'm worried about, especially knowing the price tag involved. I'm really worried about the sequential art degree. I would rather see writing. So in fact, I would even steer the person specifically towards screenwriting, because I think there's a lot of overlap between comics writing and screenwriting. I would want to see that either as a minor or even as a major. Because again, is so often we see in comics that really the writing is so much more important, and the art, the good writing always saves weaker art, and it almost never works in the other way around, right? So and then again, like Dave, I would want to see some business classes, some marketing classes.
Oh yeah.
Because if you're going to be a comics artist, if you're going to be a successful comics artist in this next generation, you're going to have to be your own, you're going to be running a small business. And that means understanding all of those things better than you do now. That comics part is the passion part. That's I'm not quite so worried about, because you're going to be doing that and excelling on your own as you dig into that. In other words, that's going to come pretty naturally. You know what doesn't come naturally? Understanding marketing and understanding business practices and understanding story structure to a degree. Those things I'm a little bit more, I'm a little bit more concerned on. But now just to counteract our own advice. Do you think this 18-year-old going into a sequential arts degree is going to listen to that?
I don't know. I was able to be talked out of the degree that I initially thought.
Is that right?
When I first went to Notre Dame, I thought I was going to be a history major. And I ended up double majoring in literature and Spanish, and I don't regret it at all. Yeah. But I had one of my history professors pull me aside and say, listen, you're great at history. I think you could have a career in this. But he goes, a history degree will teach you to become a teacher of history. That's what you end up doing. He goes, you have a creative streak. You need to be in something that gets you writing, that gets you making. He goes, go switch over to literature. I'm telling you honestly, you need to, because that was the best path for, at least at Notre Dame, for writing, was to have an overall literature degree. Yeah. And so he was right. And so I did it and did some painting classes on the side, did some studio classes on the side, and don't regret it at all. I do wish that I could have talked younger me into taking a business class. I don't know that 18, 19, 20-year-old me would have listened to that one. Because every business major, I made many a cartoon making fun of a business major at Notre Dame, because the joke was always sort of like rock heavy, rock make noise. That was sort of the joke at Notre Dame about the business majors. But I probably should have done it. I should have taken a basic 101 or even gotten as high as a 201 on owning and controlling and running a business. Basics of accounting, basics of business, basics of invoicing and terms and all that sort of stuff would have been really helpful to me. I don't know, by the way, that the American education system writ large offers a good solution for, like, this is how to operate in a capitalist society. We don't really do that well, you know? Mm-hmm. And because I am a capitalist, but I don't know that I ever benefited from learning at the right points in my life how to manage certain aspects, never even mind business, just basic finances at home and how to handle a bit, a bank account at a certain point in my life. I remember I told this story before. I had a roommate in college that thought when you ran out of physical checks, Brad, that's when you ran out of money.
That old gag?
I'm not kidding about that.
Really?
I am not kidding about that. He was a very book smart guy that was world stupid. He was one of the smartest guys I knew in chemical engineering. He was a very smart cheg. I don't know where he got this, that he thought when he ran out of physical checks, he ran out of money. Anyway, all that's to be said. What else, though, in terms of practical, like let's say they're not going to change their major, Brad, what kind of practical 18-year-old advice would you give?
Yes, because I can see us coming around on the other side of this issue, because we started off by saying, I bet you this 18-year-old will listen. And the more we talk, the more we're like, they're not going to listen to that. They're not going to listen to this. We've kind of done a 180 if you haven't noticed. And
to Kay's credit, we've adopted their attitude on this.
Yes. So let's talk about that. So let's take the original question. What would we suggest this 18-year-old? So one thing that I would say is I think that you're going to have to make your peace in today's economy with having a day job.
Yes.
And I know we had Phil Folio on the show not too long ago. And we talked about that, don't have a plan B because that'll make you have to make your plan A work. And just looking at how hard it is to afford rent or to afford a mortgage. How many people are facing the difficulty of buying their first home and credit card debt and everything that's out there. I hate to do the whole with today's economy argument, but I'm not. I almost think that that a young person graduating today is going to have to make peace with the fact that they're probably going to have a day job, and in the same way we told Emily that it's okay. That she's not going to get all of her shoulds. I think we've got to tell this person that it's okay that for a while they're gonna have a day job. I think that's realistic.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, you're very, very right. In fact, I did not want to dispute a guest when we had the wonderful Phil Folio on, because I like and respect Phil so much. And personally, he instructed us so much early in our career in terms of how to manage an independent career. But I actually, like you, I did disagree just on that one point, which is I am a strong believer in having a fallback plan. And like Brad, I'm actually a strong believer in that most cartooning careers, not the ones that we hear about as being the meteors that have launched this amazing arc in their career. The average cartooning career is probably going to be mostly pro-am. They're going to have a day job or they're going to have a part-time job, and their cartooning income will bring in $3,000, $30,000, $35,000. It's not going to be a full living, but it'll be this amazing supplement to the day job that they have or the part-time job that they have. And I think that's okay, because I remember we talk about on the show all the time that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so people think like, well, if I'm not doing it 40, 50, 60 hours a week, then I'm a failure. I'm not a real cartoonist. That's not true. For a million reasons, all of us at different points in our life have had to take a job just because we needed health care, or take a job because our significant other lost their job, so we had to buckle down and get one. Or there's medical bills suddenly in the family, or there's school bills suddenly in the family, or this or that. Or you can all think of a million situations where we need to have a supplemental or full-time job. And that's okay. We shouldn't negate the fact that that's still a valid part of having a cartooning career, is the need for a fallback plan or a supplemental plan or a plan B that carries you through the leaner moments of cartooning.
One piece of advice, Dave, that I think is overarching that I could talk about that this person might actually listen to is an old standby that I've used 100 times, and you're just going to have to hear me say it again. And that is that it's really hard to do. It's really hard to get worse at something you do every day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that has been such a touchstone for me in that I looked around and I saw there was people so much better than me, and some people with abilities that I didn't think I could ever touch, right? People I could never catch up to. And for a long time, it felt like I wasn't getting any closer to my goal. And I really did keep that one thought forefront in my mind, that it's actually difficult to get worse at something that you do every day. And I'm telling you, all you got to do is take a look at my early stuff and look at my stuff today, and see the difference between the way I used to draw, the way I draw today, the way I used to write, the way I write today. That wasn't talent. That was persistence.
No, you're 100% right. And my last bit of advice, and this is again a little bit of an aphorism, but I think it still holds true. So, Kalisa, when you pull aside this 18-year-old, I want you to look him and sit him down and say, listen, you've had a manageable studio rent for 10 years that you've been able to afford, and that you had figured out, all the pieces had clicked into place. And don't, Kalisa, tell him not to mess up the apple cart. That, listen, it's just, what is this desire for grass is greener on the other, down the hallway? You tell them they've got a studio, just stay there. They're going to end up buying carpeting.
The story. Yeah, tell them the story of Icarus. You don't want to fly too close to the sun. Your wings are going to melt if you get too close to the sun.
Yes, it's just hubris wanting a bigger studio. Don't tell the 18-year-old that it's just like, they had everything they needed. It's
who the fuck is this 18-year-old who thinks they need a studio that's 3 times? It's not like they were choking in the old one. They got everything done in the old one. You need 3 times as much space? These freaking millennials think they need everything. How about you just bloom in the pot that you were planted in? Maybe that would be nice, 18-year-old.
Exactly. So, Kalisa, tell the 18-year-old that, yes, you could get the bigger studio for an extra $300 a month, but you could also start having to buy government cheese because who knows how this is going to turn out. So, can I tell you, now as a friend, I know I have to pull back because I've joked too much, and now I've triggered the gentle, the heart valves are palpitating now, and now I got to pull back. I can see it on your face that I can't do it anymore.
You got me with government cheese. As somebody who remembers what government cheese tasted like, let me tell you, that one hit.
Oh my God, that's fun. All right, so let's jump into our next question. This comes in over at patreon.com/comiclab, and the question is for Brad specifically. Brad, old chum, do you ever lose inspiration or motivation to do NSFW comics? I fell off my horse in January. How do I get back in the old saddle? Brad, this is a good one for you specifically. How does someone who's lost their inspiration or their mojo to do NSFW comics, how do they get back in the saddle?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that you've got to you've got to look at this like any other writing challenge. In other words, I think a lot of us start out with NSFW because we kind of get a certain mindset, or we're kind of like, I got this idea that I'm really excited about, and so I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna draw it, and I'm gonna and do this thing and make it come to life. And then you do that, and it's like, oh man, that was really exciting to do that. That was fantastic. And then you wait for that lightning to strike again, and then the next time you're inspired, you do it. But if you're going to do this and with audience building in mind, you can't. It's like any other creative pursuit. You can't just sit around waiting for inspiration. You've got to take this on as any other writing challenge. You've got to find out what the core motivations and the core meanings of all of this are for you. Yeah. If you're going to make it interesting, because as I've said before, when it comes to doing NSFW comics, the mechanics get boring very, very quickly. What's interesting is what's bringing these people together in the first place. Oh,
yeah, that's a good point.
And that's my first piece of advice, is that if you're looking at this as something that you do only when you're charged up a certain way, you're not going to get very far. This, unfortunately, like anything else, is a meat and potatoes writing challenge.
I think that's true, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that that part of the mojo or the inspiration might be lost in the fact that once you get past the initial charge of just drawing it, you realize it can a little bit become like a human-shaped IKEA manual of insert slot A into slot B, in that it's not as exciting without the emotional context or the bigger story. And that, I see what you mean, that might be a leap that this question asker needs to get to, is to go from the charge of drawing just the physical action to drawing the bigger, wider emotional context that get people to find connection, right? So I get that. But I think also I can answer this even as a non-NSFW cartoonist, a cartoonist that just draws an all-ages story and a sci-fi story, which is that for every hobby, and cartooning starts for all of us as a hobby. Yeah. For every hobby, it at some point transitions into becoming a project. And then the project transitions to becoming a part-time job. And then the part-time job transitions to becoming a job. And at each one of those transitions, it requires a little bit more of stick-to-itiveness and work-like attitude. So that often means you have to set and keep a schedule, and you have to set and keep requirements of yourself of how much you will produce. Otherwise, you only do it when the mood strikes and it slides back to becoming a hobby. And by the way, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it being a hobby. My woodworking or my gardening or now my sewing is like a hobby in that, like, I do it when the mood strikes me. But if I want to take it to a project, and then a project to a semi-permanent job, and then to a full-time job, each one requires a sort of upping of the game. Not the upping of the game, the upping of the requirements of making it more workmanlike. And so, and that just requires setting a schedule, setting requirements of yourself, setting a to-do list that you keep. So but now, having said all that, I will say it's a third answer to what Brad and I maybe have for you, which is maybe this is your heart telling you that the project you started is not necessarily the one that you want to be working on right now. You thought it was, you gave it a solid 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and it's not working out. It's also a good time to examine, why are you doing what you're doing? And is this what the path you want to continue walking down as you start to set requirements of yourself? Like if you're going to say, I got to set a schedule. I'm going to do 3 a week. I'm going to do 3 a month, whatever it is. And then you're going to ask yourself, do I want to do that? Does that seem fun to me? Or not even fun? Does that seem like something I want to do? So maybe this is a time of reflection. I mean, Brad, have you ever come up to certain small projects that you thought, like maybe like your Pirates in Space story? Yeah. You could I could elevate this project to become a bigger part of my career. Do I want to do that?
Yeah, no, now we're talking about general comics advice, because we would be giving this advice to anybody, not safe for work, safe for work. Right. We'd be giving this advice to anybody who's in this situation. And I absolutely came into and it had a weird little parallel, because at one point, for a very limited time, I did kind of like an all ages comic strip that was loosely based on my sons. One of them was a superhero, because I had one son that was very earnest, very genuine, very thoughtful, very careful, very considerate. And just everything you'd think about for a superhero. And I had one son that was just unmitigated id. Right? He's just, hey, that looks good. Let's have this fun over here. I'll bet you that tastes good. And he was a perfect super villain, right? And I paired those two, and it was one of those things that it was like when something funny happened, I could translate it very quickly, and it was nice, right? It was a neat little thing, but it wasn't really my wheelhouse. It wasn't really where it just wasn't something that I could see myself doing at that point in my life. Right. I couldn't see myself really delving into that day after day after day. It made for a couple of fun little moments, but it wasn't compelling to me. And just as importantly, my audience was not finding it very compelling. Right. Yeah, my audience was kind of tepid on it, which which was kind of helped the overall decision too, where I'm like, nah, I'm going to throttle this back a little bit. I'm just not feeling it. It's just, so you can tell sometimes when you've got something that really lights your fire creatively, and something that just is going to kind of peter out. And that was one that I was like, yeah, this isn't something I'm gonna pursue for it, right? And maybe the creativity is so very, very weird. This is something that another 5 years down the road, I might pick up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I've got exactly what I needed between my ears to make this work, right?
Yes, yeah.
So you never say never, but that was one of those things. It was like I could tell very quickly, nah, this isn't going to work out.
Well, and I will say this about creativity. Sometimes, remember the sort of elevation that I had there, that hobbies elevate into projects, elevate into part-time work, elevate into full-time work. Sometimes elevating something from a hobby to a project kills all the spark that you had for it. You know, like the joy was the fact that it was a hobby. But as soon as you have to set a structure for it, as soon as it becomes a job or work like, then you lose it. And so, maybe a version of that is what's happening here, is that it went from being a fun thing that you were drawing on the side to now being more work-like. And so it's a little bit lost the spark. And not everything, to Brad's point, you save it, you hold on to it. Maybe it'll swing back around to it in 10 years, or 5 years. I have a notebook of projects and screenplays and comic projects that I want to do and standalones that I haven't done yet, just because the mood hadn't been right to make that commitment to make it into a project or a part-time job. You know, like I know that there is a there. I just haven't made the commitment to do it because the spark wasn't ready yet. So some version of that might be happening to you. And all of this is worth examining in your own heart about what made you start drawing this as a hobby, what made you elevate it to a project, and what it might take for you to get it up to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to alleviate yourself from the guilt. Like if you do decide, this isn't for me, there's not a failure in there. There's not it's nothing to be ashamed of. A lot of folks came from that era of looking at Garfield, and Jim Davis did Garfield for decade after decade after decade. And same thing with Charles Schultz. And the definition of success was doing one thing and riding it into the sunset. And I don't think that's applicable today quite so much anymore. In fact, I think it's pretty healthy to get to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna pause this for a little bit. I never say end. Nothing's final, but I'm gonna pause this right now. In fact, Dave, you and I both know folks that they worked on projects where if we could have, we would have grabbed them and said, pause it, do something else for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's healthier to put a pause on something and say, I'm gonna go do this over here for a little bit. I've got that latitude. I've got that freedom. And the only thing that's keeping you from doing that is the feeling of failure and guilt. And so that's the first thing I'd want you to just take off of your plate, because sometimes creativity means pausing something and starting something new. Yeah.
You know, that idea of guilt, it's funny you should mention that, because I was no. I'm being
I'm like, here we go. No, I know it's coming.
I was thinking about, I have definitely made a choice to keep doing Sheldon, but I think what gave me peace with that is that for a long time, I was feeling that Garfield Peanuts pressure of like Davis and Schultz. They did it their whole life. They didn't quit. Yes. They kept going. I guess I got to keep doing Sheldon. And then a part of me was like, I don't want to do it that way. Yeah. But once I gave myself permission that I could step away from Sheldon, and there was a good 5-year period where I was thinking about it, I realized, actually, no, I'm enjoying it. I'm choosing to stay. But I'm choosing to stay within the context of giving myself permission that I could walk away if I had to, and still could do that now. And somehow that gave me a little bit more of a period of grace where I could be like, no, I am enjoying this. I want to stick with it only because I know I have the ability to walk away from it. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, it made a tremendous amount of sense. So
that's what I think that's our final message to our question asker. Give yourself permission to walk away. And see that clarity that it gives you, but give yourself permission to walk away. Dave, I'm giving us permission to walk away for another week, because I think we've done another bang up job of doing Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend Anxiety, who is up pacing the floor at 3 a.m., thinking about all his life choices and the path that got him to this moment. His name is Brad Geiger. He's the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com.
And my good, close personal friend, Dave Kellett, always there to talk you off the ledge and right onto another ledge. Co-director of the comics documentary Stripped and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you like this show, please go over to Apple Podcast, rate and review the show, give us a 5-star review. And also, if you're listening on Spotify, do the same. 5-star review over there helps us stay on top of the podcast chart.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab, where you get just an oodle of benefits from joining us. So I'll say that twice, patreon.com/Comic Lab. Brad, in this specific moment, here's my advice for how you know if you have made a mistake in this choice, right? I want you to, I see there's a mirror behind you in that room that you're in right now. Yep. I want you to stand in front of the mirror and look in your eyes.
Okay. All right, I'm doing it.
And you'll know you made a mistake.
That was such a big mistake. if you don't mind, I've got to go find some shelves to put some books on. That always makes me feel better at times like this.